We're back on the Morgan Streetman Show. And Morgan, we want to get right into our local interest story, which you have been keeping an eye on, tort reform. And I haven't seen as much in the mainstream news on this subject matter as it relates, and it's going to affect us here locally.
Yeah, and it's a done deal. And boy, if you didn't keep your eye, it happened fast, folks. I mean, it happened really, really fast. In fact, they didn't even know. It was kind of Pelosi-esque, right? They didn't even know what was in the bill, really, until they passed it. That's how, I mean, they did it in 3 weeks. And all along the way, we told you this last week, all along the way as they were voting in committee and other things to move the bill forward, the bill was being amended right and left. They didn't even know what the final version of it would be, which to me is, how do you pass a bill out of committee when you don't even know yet what it's supposed to say? And that was their idea. Well, listen, don't worry about that. We'll just work it all out, in the process. And what that usually means is we'll try and slide it through before anybody notices what's happening, right? And they got all these, you got to say, quote unquote, business leaders to come in. And there are a lot of people who buy into this tort reform line. And, I just think, folks, we got to fundamentally make a decision as a society about who we want to be. And I'm not saying it's a right and wrong or a good and bad. It's just an either or. Either we want to have a system that allows you to hold someone else accountable when they participate in causing some wrong to you that shouldn't have happened, whatever it may be, whether it's intentional or just negligent. But do you want to be able to go after them for something, or do you just want to have to deal with it? Because in the old days, you basically just had to deal with it. And that's been almost the whole history of the world, right? There has not been a civil justice system to which you could go and apply for some sort of, ability to be made whole in a situation. You just kind of had to suck it up. Your Chinese immigrant working on the railroads get blown up in, a TNT accident. So sorry. Your family, we don't care. That was the answer. We don't care. Get run over by the railroad? Too bad. Don't care. You shouldn't have been walking on the track. Something like that. I mean, this is essentially the model that we've had, which is when bad things happen, you just have to live with it. If your number comes up, just so sorry. We've switched, though. This happened, back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There was a real movement to switch to something a little more fair, a little more equitable, where you could ask other people who participated in some wrong against you, again, intentionally or unintentionally, you could ask them to pay. And, of course, the insurance, we didn't always have insurance like we do today. Folks don't have the historical context to remember, there was a time when a lot of people didn't use health insurance, for example, which is a big part of this issue, how you're going to reflect medical payments. But there are other issues here that are very important. But I just want to take it to a fundamental philosophical level, which is we all have to basically agree, and I guess we don't all have to. I guess maybe it's just, majority in the legislature rules, but we have to agree what kind of a society we want to live in. And some of these changes are going to fundamentally change people's ability to be made whole when they've been hurt by somebody else.
Are we back to the TNT?
We're not far. We didn't get all the way back. Thank goodness there was really a groundswell of opposition to this from a lot of people. You can watch the videos. Now, you've got a whole litany of folks getting up there, and from, they've got all these organizations, and I don't remember the names of them, but they're all named, fairly benignly, something like the Small Business Council or something like that. I don't think that was the name, but it's something like that. And so you would assume then that these people, they must be representing all small businesses. And what I think a lot of folks don't know is a lot of these are paid lobbying organizations. You know what I mean? And they may be called something, but they may not actually be representing that interest. These folks that do this stuff, this lobbying, this propaganda, they're very clever. They know how to fool you. And it's not your fault if you get fooled. It's just you don't have time to dig into all the details behind this stuff, and it's not very accessible. And they know that. And they know they can just name an organization, and you'll just assume that that organization must represent the people for whom it's named. And so when you see, it's just a whole litany of people standing up there, I'm from this group and I'm from that group, and we got to do tort reform. You got to pass this bill. And then they've got the folks that have actually been injured, by someone else's negligence or other situations. And those folks are getting up there and saying, look, if it wasn't for the existing laws in Florida, the way they are now, before you're about to change them, I wouldn't have been able to get an attorney to represent me. They had a guy who had lost both of his hands. Anyway, a bunch of folks had come up. It was just it was very moving in a lot of ways to watch some of this testimony, because the real people who've really been affected, are all saying, don't do this massive tort reform. And all the lobbying groups are all saying, please, please do it. So that, to me, that's what you saw. If you looked at it, there was a lot of attorneys that got up and spoke, and of course, most of them are interested as well in one way or another. And of course, this breaks down to sort of a political thing. But as a society, we've got to decide. And folks, what we've decided now via the legislature is really going to affect you over the next few years. So now when people come in to have a conversation with me and that involves any of these issues, I'm going to have to tell some of them, I'm sorry, you don't have a very good case, or I'm sorry, we can't go after the insurance company because there's no guarantee we're going to get paid if we go after them for bad faith, and on and on. And then folks are going to look at me and they're going to say, well, I thought when they were talking about tort reform, I thought they were talking about getting rid of frivolous cases, not my case. I didn't think they were going to get rid of my case. And this is the same thing you hear over and over again in these states where they've done tort reform. You can watch that movie, Hot Coffee, and you can see some of that, which was about the McDonald's incident. And everybody says, oh, that was so crazy. Lady got all that money for spilling coffee on herself. You need to look into the details of that, because first of all, the number that they throw out there that she didn't get that money. But then you really want to get into the details of what McDonald's knew about the temperature that they were serving their coffee at. That it was a scalding, unsafe temperature, but they did it, and it was not recommended to be at that temperature. It should have been about 30 degrees lower when they served it. But they did it because they found that if they had enough aromatic coffee, they sold a lot more coffee. So they had the coffee essentially boiling.
So that's the reason why they did it, is to increase the revenue. It
would create as they say, profits over people, right? And hey, some old lady gets all burned up, and folks, if you saw the pictures, they're horrifying what happened to this poor lady. And look, it's for a jury to decide, right? Don't we put our faith in the juries? Well, unless they decide something we really don't like, then we got to take it away from them and change it. But let's get back to the tort reform issue, because this is what we're going to see now over the coming years in Florida, and it's really going to have a major effect. And you're going to see, here's some of the changes they made. They've removed some of the bad faith protections from the law, which would incentivize insurers to pay, policyholders as they should. Because if they don't, you have to file a notice with the Florida Department of Financial Services, which puts them on notice, essentially, that you're claiming that they've done some acts in bad faith. It's got to be detailed. Then they've got to respond, and so on and so forth. If that process doesn't result in something that makes the policyholder happy, then you can sue for bad faith against an insurance company. But now this is all changing. So now your rights to sue the insurance company for bad faith are essentially being taken away. Well, just on the broad scale, who knows what's going to happen in any individual case, but if the punishment for acting in bad faith is being removed, if we're just thinking broadly about incentives and how behavior changes based on incentives, if you remove a punishment, obviously there's a reason we had to have a punishment, right, to stop the bad faith, right? Because it's in their interest financially, maybe, sometimes to act in bad faith, not to pay claims they should pay, right? Because they don't have maybe enough money to pay all these claims all at once. So maybe it's in their financial interest to do that. And so we had to set up a system that penalized them for that so we could cut down on that. There were still plenty of cases of bad faith, plenty of insurers who got found to have committed bad faith. But now we're removing that penalty. So what do you think, if you just had to guess, is that going to increase the incidence of insurers acting in bad faith, or is that going to decrease it? Or is it going to leave it the same? I'll leave that to you to guess, and I think we'll see that play out over the next several years. Now, keep in mind, all this could be changed back with the next legislature, but it's going to be awfully hard to do it in this environment. The Republicans were almost completely lockstep on this. There was only a couple who weren't, Beltran being one of them, thankfully. And we'll try to get Representative Beltran in here to talk to us about some of this when he gets out of session. But, I mean, there's a lot more things that they've changed, and I hear the music. I'm sorry I didn't move a little faster here, but, I mean, they've taken away Section 627.428. That is the one-way attorney fee statute that I told you about. So if you're a policyholder and you sue the insurance company and you win, you get your attorney fees. But if you lose, they don't get their fees, which, again, would probably bankrupt most policyholders if they had to pay the insurance company's fees if they lost. There could be all kinds of reasons that you lose, but this is to even the playing field. Insurance companies are happy to pay attorney fees. They have plenty of money to do that. You don't. If you don't know for sure that you can get yours back and that they can't get theirs from you, it makes it a lot harder decision to file suit against them. That law's been around for 130 years, and now it's gone as of last week. I'm going to stay on this just a little bit when we come back, and we'll get into some other stuff.
Back on the Morgan Streetman Show, and Morgan, we are going to wrap up this discussion on tort reform. And as you're going through all of this, I'm trying to put this in perspective and think about how this tort reform will affect us as a community, as a society. Does it lower our standards and expectations of what insurance carriers provide? That's essentially what it's doing, and almost acts like a sort of tax, a premium on insurance coverage, because it's just another way to collect money that you're not going to get what you should be getting for it.
Well, that's right. You know, if
We pay more and get less.
Isn't that
Yes,
that's the
thank you,
order of the
Pat.
day, Pat George? You're going to pay more for everything, your groceries to your insurance, and you're going to get less and less, and you're going to like it. Remember, you're going to eat the bugs, and you're going to like it. You're going to own nothing, and you're going to be happy. And if they just keep hammering us with that, I guess they think it'll be true.
This is shrinkflation of the insurance world.
That's right. This is some serious shrinkflation. So they're getting rid of protections that we've had for over 100 years with the attorney fee statute. They've modified the contributory negligence standard now. So remember, we told you it was comparative negligence, and believe me, there was a big push for years and years among tort reformers to move to that. You know, we got to have full comparative negligence. We got to have everybody on the verdict form and everything else. Okay, so that's all done now. As soon as they get that done, now they want to go back to the old railroad standard, the old contributory standard, and they literally tried to push it through that if you were more than 1% or more liable for your own injury, 1%. Like maybe you weren't wearing your sunglasses. I mean, what is 1%? How could you be one? You know, it's like you must have done very little if you're 1% liable for your own injuries. But if you did that, you get zero. Now, the bill, as they actually passed it, thankfully they got rid of that, okay? But it's 50% now. If you are more than 50% responsible for your own injury, you recover zero. Zero. So that's the new standard.
Well, that'd be like not wearing your seatbelt.
Well, yes, but who knows what it's like, right? Because the jury gets to decide that. The point is, it used to be that you paid according to, and you got paid according to everybody's percentage of fault as determined by the jury. Now, that's the case, except when your percentage of fault exceeds 50%, and then you get nothing. That's the new standard, which seems to me to be a move away from fairness and a move towards a punitive standard where if you're more than 50% responsible for your own injury, you can't recover from anybody, even if somebody else also had a high amount of responsibility. You know, could have had 49%, say, responsibility for your injury, and you couldn't recover anything. So that's important. They've added, as we told you they were going to do, they added the criminal assailant now on negligent security, so premises liability type cases of like a criminal assailant type, so that's the negligent security world. So negligence is when you have a duty to somebody else and you breach it. A lot of people call it an accident or unintentional, and it can be unintentional. That's right. And it doesn't mean that you have to have set out to do a criminal act. A criminal act is something that you do intentionally with a criminal mindset. And so that is not negligence. There's no question about that under the law. That's not negligence. But now the legislature says they can put the criminal assailant on the verdict form to assign that person some of the negligence. So if you've got, Joe Blow apartment building and you've got, John Smith criminal assailant, and they're both on the form, I mean, what do you think the jury's going to do? They're probably going to put most of it on John Smith criminal assailant, because who really caused the problem here, folks? Was it the apartment building that didn't have good security, or was it John Smith, the evil criminal guy who came in and did the bad criminal act? Well, I think the juries are largely going to find it's going to be John Smith, the criminal guy. He's going to get 90%, 75%, something like that, and the apartment building is going to get less. Now, I'm just using that as an example. Could be a store, could be anything. Point is, Why are you putting the criminal assailant on the negligence line? It's not negligence, it's a criminal act. And the answer is just to because we don't want people to be held liable for this stuff, because we don't want businesses or insurance companies that insure them, and that's what it is. It's the insurance companies that insure them to be held liable for this. That's the answer, right? Also, very important, statute of limitations cut in half now. It was 4 years for negligence, now it's 2. This is huge. If you got a claim that's over 2 years old, you're going to be in trouble. You're not going to have a claim. You're going to lose based on the statute of limitations. You just don't have a claim. So it's 4 years. By the way, there were apparently thousands upon thousands of lawsuits filed last week, because if you got them in before the bill was signed Friday morning at like 10:44 in the morning, or I think I have the exact time here, maybe 10:41. 10:44 in the morning on Friday. If you got it filed before then you're grandfathered in under the old rules. It's not retroactive. So, but anything after that, so you're filing today, you're not grandfathered in. Your claim accrues after Friday. Now you're on a 2-year statute instead of a 4-year. That's a big deal. That's a big shift for folks, and it's going to cause people to lose some claims that they had. And we're going to see how this plays out now as a society, and we're going to see if you're happy with the changes that the legislature made, and if you're not, hopefully you will vote in people who will consider changing it back somewhat.
So you said that attorneys will be probably less busy.
Well, I've talked to a lot of property attorneys, and they're, feeling like this is going to hurt a big portion of their business. I've talked to other insurance claims attorneys. I mean, bad faith attorneys are going to have, a lot of extra time on their hands all of a sudden. There's going to be I'm going to suspect there's going to be a lot less negligence cases filed. I'm going to suspect when you've got that case where the person wasn't wearing their seatbelt, you're going to have a hard time finding an attorney to take that case, because if they find 51%, you're out. 0. You get 0. So who wants to roll the dice on that? I mean, to put these cases on costs an attorney a lot of money. I'll tell you, it's just tens of thousands of dollars with the experts and everything else. And you're investing your own time, and you've usually got staff working for you. I mean, it's a big investment for an attorney to go put on a case for a plaintiff. Plaintiffs typically can't fund their own injury cases.
It used to be all those young kids that wanted to be attorneys. Now they all want to be influencers.
That's right.
But there's that one
Exactly.
little group of kids, maybe 10, that want to be attorneys. Now probably there's only 5.
I hope so. Because we probably got enough attorneys for a little while, to be honest with you. Everybody flowed into being an attorney because they thought, wow, you can make a lot of money being an attorney.
And we can never have too many influencers, right?
That's what we need. We need more social media influencers on YouTube. All right. Well, some really interesting stuff is going to come to pass in the next couple of years. We're going to experience it. I'm sorry I'm going to be having to counsel people dealing with this, because it is going to be some sad stories in some of these cases, but we're just going to have to live with it. And we got to remember, we make these decisions as a society, and we can make a decision as a society that you just can't recover for somebody else's negligence. We could make that decision. The thing was, we sort of years ago decided that wasn't very fair, and that you should be able to recover. And then we decided it should get more fair, and it should be exactly according to everybody's percentage. And it seemed like we were moving towards a more fair system with that, but now we've kind of taken a step backwards. So, folks, this is something, maybe an issue you're going to need to consider when you go to vote for your legislator next time, or when you're asking them questions, you may want to ask them where they stand on some of this. Or maybe we're all happy with it, and we just say, hey, this is just how it's going to be, and if you get injured, sorry, but you're kind of on your own. And best of luck to you. I guess we'll find out.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.